Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the full walkthrough of Lesson 8, Getting Screen Inputs. I had done this assessment level before, and there's a video for that, but I'm going to walk through the entire lesson, so from the beginning to end in this video. So let's just start at the beginning and jump in here. And this was a difficult lesson, but we can just take it one step at a time and we'll get through it. First level is a predict. This program includes a form for users to fill out and say, what do you think this code will do? Write your prediction in the box below, then run the code to see what happens. So we have a profile editor here with a name input field, a color dropdown, and then a slider. So our name, our favorite color, then on a scale from 1 to 3, how do we feel about dogs? And then we have a save button, and we have some text fields down here. The name output, the color output, the dog output, and the dog image. Everything here is in an on-event block when we click the save button. So when we click the save button, we're going to create 3 variables, name, color, and dog. And as you may have guessed, we're going to take the values from the name input, the color dropdown, and the dog slider. We're going to store those in these 3 variables. So we have a get text from the name input, a get property from the value property of the color dropdown, and we have a get property of the value property of the dog slider. Then we immediately set the text of the name output. So we use that value that we took from the name that the user typed in. That's going to be put into the name output. So that name will appear here. And then the the color that we stored in the color variable will be written to the background color of the color output. So we'll get a rectangle here of the user's favorite color that they selected on that dropdown. And then we have 3 conditionals, so we check the value of dog in our dog variable. If it's 1, we write a frown icon to the image property of the dog image, so we would get a frowny face here. If it's 2, we would get a meh, and if it's 3, we would get a smiley. That's a lot to predict here. I'm going to say simply when the save button is clicked, the information the user entered will be written to the fields below. Let's try it. Mr. R, favorite color, I don't know, blue. And I feel good about dogs. Save, and there it is. We got the smiley, we got the blue, we got the name. And if we change this, maybe I don't like dogs, and my favorite color is orange. Oops, I got to put that back in. Favorite color, orange. And I don't like dogs at all. I get the orange and the frowny. All right, good. Level 1 done. Next. Okay, in level 2, we're introduced to get and set text. This app simulates a temperature sensor in certain rooms of the house. You can customize the welcome screen by entering your name and the room of the house that the sensor is in. The app uses a variable and get text block to get the user's name, then a set text block to update the screen. However, the second input box isn't set up correctly. So they give us the first one, and the do this says update the room label element with what the user typed in. And this is how we do it. We add a variable and get text block to get the input from the room input element. And we add a set text block to update the room label element. Again, this field up here is the name input, and this field is the room input. This field down here, or this, I should say screen element. This screen element is the name label, and this screen element is the room label. So we're getting text from the name input and the room input, and we're setting text to the name label and the room label. And that's all linked to an event handler that's linked to this button when we click the start button. We're going to do exactly what they did here, except we're going to do it not with the name input and the name label. We're going to do it with the room input and the room label. Pull a variable block over and a get text here, and we'll call this variable room. And we want to get the text from the room input, and then we'll use a set text, and we'll take that value from that variable room that we just stored information in, and we'll write that to the room label screen element. That should be it. Something that has confused a lot of my students is that when you put the variable name in here, it should not have quotes. If there are quotes, the machine interprets that as a string data type, and what we want here is it to interpret this as a variable, not the word room, but the variable room that contains the information that we stored in there with the get text. So let's run this and try it. And there it is. It writes my name to my room. All right, and that's level 2. Moving on to level 3. Okay, in level 3, we're working with dropdowns. You can also use a dropdown to let the user interact with the screen. A dropdown lets you select from a list of options. You can use the get property block to get the value from the dropdown and use it in your app. This app should let the user change the background color of the app, but it isn't finished. Do this. Get the value from the dropdown by adding a variable and the get property block to get the value from the color dropdown element. And then we're going to update the background color by using a set property block to update the background of the screen to the value that we got from the dropdown. Okay, let's do that. So the first thing is we've got the color dropdown here, and we have a button called the start button. We've got the color dropdown and the start button. When we click the start button, we want to get the value from the dropdown. Okay, so that's going to be our variable block again, and we'll call our variable color. And then we want to use a get property, and we're going to get the property from the color dropdown, and we want the value of the value property of the color dropdown screen element. We're going to store that in the color variable. Then we're going to update the background color. So we need to then use a set property, and we're going to set the home screen background color, and we're going to put in our variable here, not in quotes. These are color variables. So the value that was stored in that variable will set the background color property of the home screen. And that should do it. Sets it to black, sets it to white. And, we could go into design mode here, and we could add more values or more options to our dropdown. We could do red and green and purple. You could put any of the HTML color names in here, like coral or tomato, I think is one. Let's see if those work. Run it. Red, green, purple, coral? Woo! Tomato. Yes, indeed. And that is level 3, finished. Continue. Next. And funny enough, what I just did in the last level is number 4, where they tell you to change the options. You can also edit the drop-down list of options from design mode. For example, you could update the color choices to match 2 opposing sports teams or the school logo colors. Do this in design mode. Select the drop-down element and change the colors in the options area. For example, colors that match what you're wearing today or colors that match different sports teams, and then run the program. So again, that's in the design tab, and then we click on the color drop-down, and then we can edit the options here. We can put in whatever we want. And I was using HTML color names. There's a good list of those at W3 Schools. If you just Google HTML color names, and that'll bring you to W3 Schools here. And it says all modern browsers support the following 140 color names. So you can put any of these color names will work. Also, you could use the hex codes as arguments there, and you can also use the RGB function as an argument for a color there, I believe, but we don't need to go there. So that's level 4. Let's move on. Okay, level 5. Here we're introduced to sliders. Sliders let you change the values in a range. Like when you want to give a rating to something, you can use the same get property block to get their value from a slider, to get the value from a slider. This app uses 2 sliders to change the width and height of an image. Right now, only the width is working. Add code to adjust the height of the image too. Do this. Get the value from the slider and store it in a variable. Add a variable and get property block to get the value from the height slider. Update the height of the image on the screen. Add a set property block to update the height of the image. Okay, we can do that. So we're going to use, again, what they've done with the width as kind of a model. So the first thing is get the value from the slider, store it in a variable. So we're going to pull a variable block over here, and we'll call this height value. And remember, you can name your variables whatever you want, but there's rules for naming of variables. And you should also give it a name that makes sense, that indicates what it is. Then we're going to pull a get property over here. We're going to get this is the height slider. We want to get the value of the value property of the height slider screen element stored in the height value variable. Then we update the height of the image on the screen with a set property block here. And that's going to be the emoji height. And we want to write our variable value to that, height value. And that should do it. We're going to run that height and width update. There it is. Make it as small as it goes. Update. Oh, it's gone. And make it as large as it goes. Set it in the middle. Good. And they said to, note that the image doesn't get very large. In the next level, we'll see how we can change the minimum and maximum values for sliders. I'm assuming our minimum value here is 0, since when we dial it all the way down, it disappears. And we'll see how to set that in the next level. All right, so let's move on to level 6. Okay, so in level 6, it says you can use design mode to change the minimum and maximum values for your sliders. Do this in design mode, click on the width slider element and find the maximum value property, change it from 50 to 300. Do the same thing for the height slider. So we're going to go to design mode here, and we're going to click on the width slider, and we're going to go down to minimum value. I think it said 50 to 300. Yeah, minimum value, yeah, it was 0. We're going to change that to 50 so it doesn't disappear at its minimum, and 300 max. And then we're going to do the same thing for the height slider, 50 to 300. And let's run that, see how that worked. So it gets much larger. So the smallest it'll go is 50. The largest is 300. All right, looks good. And that is how to adjust the minimum and maximum values of your slider. Good. Let's move on to level 7. Okay, so now we are introduced to the input event, where it'll update the screen as we change the slider, which is kind of cool. So it says here, sliders can also be attached to events so you can see the screen update as the slider moves. This new input event, which detects when the slider changes as the user moves it. This uses the input event. To do this, as the width slider updates change the width of the image, we drag out a new on event, we change the element to width slider and the event type to input, and then we copy all the code from the update button event into this new event. Might need to switch into text mode, verify that changing the slider changes the image, and then do the same thing for the height slider element. So, okay, that's doable. So we're going to grab actually 2 on event blocks here, and this one is going to be changed. What do we change this to? Change the element width slider. So, okay, yeah, right. When the width slider takes an input, then we're going to do all this stuff. So we're going to switch to text here, and we're just going to copy everything that was in this on event down into this one. And we can copy it, well, width, height. Actually, we don't want this here. We want this one in the height on event. We want this down here, back to the blocks. And we want to change this ID to height slider input. Okay, so we added 2 on events. We can get rid of these comments too. Let's get rid of those. Just get rid of these extra lines so you can better see the code. So we added 2 on events, one for the width slider input and one for height slider input. And then we copied down these 4 blocks respectively. That should, yeah, there it goes. And does the width work? Yep. Cool. And that is how we use the input event. Let's move on to level 8. And here we are at the practice levels. Mr. Russell, do I have to do all the practice? Yes, you have to do all the practice. Practice A, the pet scene creator. Let's do this. Create an app that lets you mix and match different background images with animal images to create different scenes. The images have already been uploaded to your app. You need to add the code that updates the screen when the user presses the create button. Well, that's nice. They already updated the images or uploaded. Click the get the values from the dropdowns and store it in variables. Update the images. Okay. Get the values from the dropdowns. That means we need these. and it's going to be two values, right? My dropdown is the background dropdown and the pet dropdown. So I'm going to call my first variable background and my second one pet. And then I need a couple of get properties. And I need to get from the background dropdown that's going to be the value. It's not. It's going to be the text. And from the pet dropdown, I also want the text. Update the images on the screen. So that means we're going to use these with a couple of set properties. That would be the background image and the pet image. So background image and pet image. And we're going to use our background variable here and our pet variable here. And we're going to set the image property. See if that works. Show me a cat by the fireplace. Didn't work. Okay, where'd we go wrong? Let us see. I'm going to collapse my toolbox. So this is wrong right here. I had it in there, and then it changed when I changed the property. So this should be background. And this should be pet. See if that works. Show me a pig in the kitchen. Yay! Pig in the kitchen! Dog at the fireplace. We've got a bunny in the bedroom. How much fun is that? All right, good. Let's go back to practice. And to the digital menu we go. Okay, the digital menu creator. We're back to get text and set text with this. Create an app that creates a customizable menu for a restaurant. The restaurant can enter their name, a special dish, and the price. Then they can use the menu to display outside their restaurant or on their website. Get the values from the text inputs stored in 3 variables. Update the label elements on the screen. Okay, so we need 3 variables. 1, 2, 3. And we need to get text with each of these. 1, 2, 3. We're going to get the text from, what is that? Restaurant something, special input, and price input. This would be restaurant input, special input, and then the price input. So this is going to be restaurant name. This is going to be today's special. And this is going to be special price. Now we need to update the label elements on the screen, and we've got a restaurant label, a description. We've got restaurant label, special label, and price label. Okay, so we're going to set text, restaurant label, special label, price label, and we're going to use our variables here. This is going to be restaurant name. I'm just going to copy that down here. Come on. And then copy this here, remove the quotes, and the special price. We're going to copy that down here. Remove quotes. I think that'll do it. Let's try it. Restaurant name is Joe's. Special name is what do we? The Sloppy Joe at Joe's. The price is $1,000. There it is. Let's go back to the practice and do the next one. Where you're from. Ooh. Okay. Create an app that lets you move a cursor around on a map to identify where you're from. The app should use sliders for the X and Y position of the cursor. Add 2 on event blocks to check when the user adjusts each slider. Get the values from the sliders, store them in variables, update the position of the pointer arrow. And I think we want to use the input event, or maybe not, I don't know. Maybe just the change event. Okay, so add 2 on event blocks to check when the user adjusts each slider. So there's one, and there's another one. This is the X and Y slider. So X slider and Y slider and change and change. And we want to get the values from the slider and store them into variables. So we got to pull a couple of these guys over here. And this will be X position. This will be Y position. And then we need a couple get properties. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Get property, get property. And we need to get the value from the X slider. And we need to get the value from the Y slider. That was number 2 here. Get the values from the sliders and store them in 2 variables. And then number 3 is update the position of the pointer arrow. So that is called the pointer. So we want to, in each of these on events, we want to set a property then. And we want to set the X to our X position. And then we want to set the pointer's Y to our Y position. Let's see if that works. Sure does. The weird thing about this is that the pointer, we should adjust the minimum and maximum of the sliders, so it doesn't, go off the page here, right? Why don't we do that? We don't want we don't want the Y to go less than 190. 225, or more than 380. So the Y should minimum, what was that? It was 225, and maximum was 380. And then the X shouldn't go less than 0 or greater than 320. Run that. So, yeah. Yep. Oh, that's not right. Yeah, we need to adjust that X a little bit, but you get the idea. We can adjust the min and max to keep the pointer on the map that way. All right, let's move on. The last practice here is debugging this guy. This app is meant to ask a series of secret questions to unlock the final screen, but each question has a bug. Read through the code and experiment with the app to fix the bugs and reach the final screen. You only need to update the code that already exists. You don't need to add any new lines of code. And this was difficult to find this first bug, so let me show you something. If we look at this, let's run it. Choose the secret animal. Okay, so if we look at the code, we're going to get the value that we select from the dropdown and store it in trial one answer, and then we're going to check that against the mountain ibex. So the correct answer is mountain ibex. If our answer is mountain ibex, then it's supposed to set the screen to trial 2 and we move on. If it's not equals mountain ibex, then we get the try again message. So if we set it to mountain ibex, that's the correct answer, check. It doesn't work. It doesn't send us to the next screen. And it would be nice if I could look at what is stored in this variable, because we're getting the options from the dropdown and storing them in trial one answer. And we can do that with a console.log command. So after I store the value from the dropdown into that trial one answer, I can say console.log trial one answer. Show me in the console the value of that variable. So we're going to reset, we're going to run this, and then choose that and check. Try one answer. I think I have a misspelling or something. It is a misspelling. This should be a capital A. So reset, run, check. Okay, so you can see down here in the console, what have I stored in the variable? I've stored snow owl, desert iguana, mountain ibex, and ocean dolphin. I've stored all 4 answers in there, not just mountain ibex. So even though I selected mountain ibex, it stores every one of them. That's not right. So that means that there's something wrong with this property right here. We're not getting the value from the correct property. And if we go to the design tab and click the drop down, we can see that, oh, here's the options property. Well, the options property has all 4 of these. So if we ask for the value of the options property, it's going to give us all 4. What we want is the value of the value property. That's confusing. Back to the code. So all we have to do is change this to value. Now we run it, and notice that when I select Snow Owl and I check it, the only thing stored in that variable is Snow Owl. If I select the correct answer, boom, we go to the next screen. Good. All right, so here are the screen 2 bug. Choose the secret number. And the secret number is 35, right? Because if the answer is equal to 35, we go to the next screen. But the slider only goes to 10. So we got to go back to the design tab here, and we got to change the minimum and the maximum rather. We need to go here and select trial 2, and then select our slider. And the maximum value should not be 10, it should be 35 or more. And then we can go back to the code, run, Mountain Ibex, check. We go to the slider, 35, check, boom. And we're on to the 3rd bug. Now, what's the correct answer for the 3rd one? The correct answer is Open Sesame is the secret code. And if we type Open Sesame, we get an error. What's our error? Trial free input hasn't been declared yet. Aha! We have called our variable trial free answer, but we have accidentally used trial free input instead. So we just need to change trial free input to trial free answer. Reset, run. Mountain Ibex. 35. Open Sesame. Boom. Made it. Whew. All of the practice are done. Let's move on. Oh, I already solved the assessment in the other video. And we're at 38 minutes now to get through this lesson. And that was a long one. So I'm not going to solve the assessment again. I'm going to cut this off. You can go to that other video and watch the assessment solution if you want. You don't have to do the challenges, although I would encourage you to do those. I hope this helped. I went through it quickly with not a lot of explanation. But again, it was a long lesson, and it's difficult at first, but if you just work through it and, take advantage of the show me and these drop downs that give you the hints and things if you get stuck. So thanks for watching. If you made it this far, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.